All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mansour Abdul Malik, Senior Vice President for the NHP Foundation. I want to thank you all for coming today to the 2022 NHP Foundation Symposium, One Paycheck Away from Homelessness, Building Popular Support for Affordable Housing, our first completely in-person event since 2019. And obviously, everyone's happy to be here. The past few years have given rise to an indisputable fact which we are going to explore here today. Millions of Americans living in or trying to live in affordable housing are just one paycheck away from homelessness. Yet the U.S. faces an epic housing shortage, which experts say could take nearly a decade to erase, which brings us to where we are today. How can all of us in this room increase popular support, acceptance, and access to more affordable housing? We're going to gain insights from those on the front lines today. I'd like to kick off today's proceedings by asking that you complete the online pulse survey by 5:15. That's 5:15. Okay? And also, please help me to welcome the man who's been responsible for leading NHPF the past decade plus, our CEO, Mr. Richard F. Burns.
Thank you, Mansour. And on behalf of everyone at the NHP Foundation, welcome to our 6th annual symposium, here again at Union Station. To begin today's program, we'd like to remember an important member of the NHPF family who we recently lost. Frank L. Sullivan, Jr. was a man who demonstrated in word and action tremendous passion for his work, his family, and his friends, and in no small part helped influence the trajectory of affordable multifamily housing. A founding partner of Clarion Partners, a leading New York-based commercial real estate investment firm, Frank represented some of our nation's largest public institutions. He was extraordinarily proud of the significant returns he achieved. Frank also taught finance at NYU for a number of years. When he retired, Frank then turned his talents to the affordable housing world. In particular, he joined our board as a trustee and became chairman of the Board Investment Committee. In this role for the past 7 years, Frank provided invaluable counsel on myriad deals the organization brought to the committee. Beyond his professional achievements, Frank was also a generous and gregarious friend who enjoyed successfully closing a deal almost as much as he enjoyed his loving family, travel abroad, and his favorite Aubert Chardonnay. So Frank was a real loss to our board, and we just thought it appropriate that we honor him here today. And thank you all of our sponsors, attendees, and contributors this evening who amaze us each year with your generosity. Now please help me welcome the chair of our Board of Trustees, Ralph Boyd.
Thank you very much, Dick. And of course, we all echo your kind words about Frank Sullivan, our friend and colleague who embraced our shared vision of a world where everyone is safely and stably housed. And let me add my thanks to our generous sponsors whose support makes such a difference to the residents of our housing, who are working steadfastly to stabilize and in many cases transform their lives. Tonight we ask, what will it take to create a country where public and private sectors galvanize unprecedented support for service-enriched affordable housing that changes the lives for so many of the most vulnerable people and families? What will it take from government, from the nonprofit world and for-profit developers, the corporate sector, and the broader society to make the efforts necessary to house those in need? Many of you have already spoken with our surveyors about building popular support for affordable housing, and the entire report is found in your journal. We're also giving all of you one last chance to weigh in on our anonymous two-question pulse survey that is ending now. So would you please click on the QR code and add your voice and your ideas. At this time, we would like to acknowledge the chairs of our 6th annual symposium. Please stand when I call your name. Sherry Santos-Wust and Shel Schreiberg. Many thanks to the two of you, our deeply committed trustees who've extended yourselves beyond your usual commitments to lead the board's support for tonight's event. Shel and Sherry, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And as is our tradition, we begin with this evening's awardees. We're honoring United States Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon with our first ever Homeless to Housing Advocacy Award in recognition of his work on finance, taxation, and other committees as a champion of legislation to end homelessness in America. We are pleased to recognize an outstanding lawmaker working in bipartisan fashion to sustain and improve conditions, allowing the preservation and creation of affordable housing. If we can now see the video clip of Senator Wyden's remarks.
I'm honored to receive this Homeless to Housing Award to deliver on the important value that housing is a basic human right. I'm looking forward to partnering with all of you as we work to remodel America's housing system to ensure that we are housing and supporting our most vulnerable neighbors. All the best for a successful conference.
So Dick, I yield back the podium.
Remodeling America's housing. Senator Wyden said, that's a great description of what we do. All of us here today are grateful for the role industry organizations and other service providers play in turning our housing into homes for residents. One such industry organization, Temenos CDC, a strong NHPF partner in Houston, with whom we are currently constructing the Temenos Place apartments, is a distinguished provider of affordable housing opportunities, supportive services, employment resources to low and extremely low-income persons on their journey to self-sufficiency. This hard-working, solutions-oriented organization is headed by CEO Eva Thibodeau, a licensed clinical social worker in the field of homelessness since 1996. Her current position for 3 years, Eva worked tirelessly to bring dignity, hope, and care to the most vulnerable people in Houston. Under Eva's leadership, Temenos has expanded to more than 250 households of permanent supportive efficient apartments, fully furnished and fashioned with the necessary objects to start a new life. Eva has also collaborated on the design and development of the latest Temenos residences and totally restructured the agency to increase efficiency and invest in staff. We are pleased to recognize Eva for her achievements with NHPF's Industry Leader Award. Because Eva is also presenting a building achievement story this evening, we will be hearing from her shortly. At this point, I'd like to introduce esteemed colleagues and acknowledged experts in their respective areas of the affordable housing universe. Emily Kadick serves as Chief Executive Officer of the Affordable Housing Tax Credit Coalition, where she leads advocacy to support affordable rental housing finance using the low-income housing tax credit. Tom Amdor serves as Senior Vice President, Policy and Impact for Lincoln Avenue Capital, which provides high-quality, sustainable, and affordable homes for low-income individuals, seniors, and families across the country. Tonight, Emily and Tom will guide us on our exploration of what it will take to fully support those who are living one paycheck from homelessness. Emily and Tom.
Great. Well, thank you, Dick, a great friend and partner, and Ralph for the introduction. We are honored to have been asked to MC this great event, which has only grown in stature and influence since its debut 6 years ago. And Tom, it's a pleasure to share the stage with you again.
Well, it certainly is, and I know we have a script, but I've been a big West Wing fan forever, and this is the first time I've ever actually gotten to stand in front of a teleprompter, so this is a real, personal thrill for me.
Bucket list, yeah.
So thank you very much, NHP Foundation. Every year, NHP Foundation taps into the zeitgeist to unpack a critical affordable housing issue for and in collaboration with all our distinguished partners in the audience today. This year, the Foundation is using proprietary research and storytelling to examine ways to build broad-based coalitions in support of affordable and supportive housing initiatives.
So we will begin by presenting compelling building achievement stories from leading affordable and supportive housing developers in 4 different regions of the country who employed creativity, strategy, and perseverance to build support for their respective projects, as well as a unique story from a high school student in an NHPF community.
And we also look forward to revealing and discussing the results of our pulse survey, which I know we've been reminded a few moments just recently to fill out. I hope there's still time. We'll be revealing those results later on in the program, but please do get your feedback in there.
Yeah, and in your journal, you'll find the NHP Foundation report featuring the combined results of a survey of NGOs in the affordable housing space and a second survey gauging public perceptions and ways to create positive connections between community and affordable and supportive housing initiatives. Together, the 2 surveys provide insight for neutralizing negative attitudes and building effective coalitions. And the NHP Foundation has just done a tremendous amount of work with the goal of having you walk away with new ideas and options to help you in your day-to-day work. We know a lot of you get event journals and may not even read them, but we really encourage you to make a point to read this one. Now we'd like to invite our first Building Achievement presenter and honoree, Eva Thibodeau, Temenos CDC CEO, to accept her award and share with us how Temenos CDC is getting creative to help solve what sometimes feels like an intractable challenge.
Thank you so much to my partners at NHP. If I had known how close we would all get over these last 3 years and the ups and downs that we would be going through, I would do it again. So thank you. Thank you. And it's there. So Temenos CDC, we're located in Houston, Texas. We did not spell Tenemos wrong. Our name is Temenos Community Development Corporation, and it is an incredible organization to be part of. I think that the meaning of the word Temenos, which is Greek, says it all. It's a caring, safe place, and that is what we provide for the residents who come to us. We began in 2006, and we were founded by Pastors Rudy and Juanita Rasmus out of St. John's United Methodist Church. What they and the congregation had seen and welcomed in to their church and their home and their sanctuary were people experiencing unsheltered homelessness for long periods of time on the streets around their church. So the congregation began to serve them. They saw that a lot of people who were better at getting their needs met and could speak up for themselves were able to find housing. The people who they kept on seeing every single week, day after day, were those who were the most vulnerable, experiencing serious mental illness, inability to care for themselves, and so many other co-occurring issues. And so the church decided that they were going to build a new type of housing that nobody else at the time was doing. They said, we are opening our doors to the people that nobody else wants to serve. And we remain committed to that mission all these years later. Our vision is to make sure that we serve those that nobody else sees, that we house them, and that we keep them housed. This is one of our residents. I think that a lot of us in this room have probably been part of building, financing, developing really beautiful buildings and projects and we love our buildings as well, but this is really who we are there for. The young people who are aging out of foster care, the folks with serious mental illness, people who have been left behind and forgotten, people who have burned all of their other bridges. So there are challenges in doing this. A lot of people hear affordable housing, or they hear housing for people leaving homelessness, and all the stereotypes come up, and everybody jumps on the NIMBY bandwagon. Even probably a lot of us in this room, which part of tonight is getting our heads around how can we not continue to be part of that problem, but rather how can we be part of a solution and take away the stigma of affordable housing. So people worry about property values, they worry about violence, they worry about litter and trash, they don't want that element, correct? Well, the reality is that property values, according to every study that's been done for years and years and years and repeated again and again, property values continue to go up. They do not go down. These projects do not decrease property values. Public safety goes up. When people aren't living unsheltered, having their issues on the streets, I think we can all agree life is healthier for everyone, the person experiencing homelessness and the community. We find that there is a decreased use of first responders, which saves money for everyone and frees up resources for other people in the community. And there's overall increased community wellness. We are about changing lives by pairing supportive services with quality housing. So, there are some things that you can do to get started on this or to support the work of it. You can partner with churches and nonprofits. Oftentimes, these entities already own property, and you can eliminate a lot of hurdles if you already have site control. Plus, if you partner with a congregation, you get their whole congregation's support, which is pretty awesome. Make sure that in your buildings that you're being a good neighbor. Get to know folks, invite them into your buildings, make them part of your community. We have bright teal blue with neon letters saying Temenos Volunteer Crew, and our residents go out and wear their vests and they help pick up trash in the neighborhood. You know, they're very visible, and so we're showing our neighbors that we are also good neighbors. Join your civic associations, get your business districts to invest, to be part of this, engage your elected officials. Influence policy, and this can happen in so many ways, and I want to share briefly in Houston one of the things that happened through some really awesome collaborative things. Some of you may have heard that a while ago we had this Hurricane Harvey thing come through, and so we were blessed with a bunch of disaster recovery money, and a large portion of that is going into affordable housing. And in each of the applications and the guidelines around that is that every single developer who gets that money has to have a set aside of some units that come through a centralized referral, i.e., people exiting homelessness. So what I would say is get a toehold and build from there. Your past, showing the accomplishments and showing the amazing things that you can do are going to influence and provide your future. So this was our groundbreaking on our collaboration with our 95 units with NHP Foundation. And I wanted to point out a couple of people in the picture. Our founders are in the middle. That's Pastor Rudy and Juanita Rasmus. And our board chair, Mark Thomas, is on the end. I am sure after this that many of you will have questions, and I would welcome you to direct those questions to our founder, Pastor Rudy Rasmus, who's here, and my board chair, Mark Thomas, the men who really have kept this going. Thank you.
So, my name is Mead Rhodes, and I've had the opportunity to get to know Eva. through a project that we started about a year and a half ago. And Jason Soifer, somewhere in here, and I there he is, flew down to meet Eva about a year and a half ago. And we ended up at at lunch, we ended up at a big round table. And it was in the middle of COVID, so we're all spread out, but we took our masks off and we were able to connect a little bit. And so before lunch, I felt pretty good, you know, about leaving this world a little better than I found it, right? My own little efforts, right? At the end of the lunch, like inadequacy and selfishness are two words that came to mind, right? So what I can tell you about Eva is that Eva is from Wisconsin. She relocated to Houston to take a job working with foster kids, and at age 22 started to work with two particular kids who had been in the system and bounced around and come back, and there was at one point there was a threat that they might get split, and so Eva stepped in and opened her home as a foster parent, right? Right? So that was at 22. At 24, she stepped up and adopted those kids, right? So at some point, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm just not doing enough, right? And so as we continued this conversation, learn more about Eva and some of the sacrifices that she's made. And so she's passed on promotions, right? She skipped vacations. Her work with kids has impacted her own personal relationships. And I think it's fair to say that in her work with these foster kids, she puts their needs ahead of characteristics that we would typically, you know, may think twice about. So for instance, she typically works with boys, right? And hard to place boys. She's been blind to HIV, to fetal alcohol syndrome, to drug addiction, to police records, to violence and abuse, to disability, mental health issues, race, gender, and sexual orientation, right? Pretty amazing stuff. I'm told that her front door is never locked, right? So, and then at the end of this discussion, I learned that Eva, hang on, Eva has fostered in her home 85 kids. Right? And in that process, she's adopted 7. So at the end of lunch, I felt like I was in the presence of a saint. Right? And I think it's fair to say that we should all be honored to be with her tonight. So, can I give you a hug?
Wow, what a start to the night. Thank you, Eva. I think we speak for everyone in our appreciation of your life spent in service, both personally and professionally, and for the strategies you outlined to help move communities to support affordable housing projects. According to some of the interviews conducted by the NHP Foundation study, people who have substance use disorders, experience untreated mental illness, or are returning citizens are some of the most controversial to serve, and your work to sway public opinion is instructive and inspiring to all of us. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our next presenter, John Searles, Community and Economic Development Officer at the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, where he is responsible for relationship management and outreach strategies. He works with affordable housing developers to provide them with capital and expertise, partners with municipalities on their downtown revitalization plans, and supports small business expansion. He recently moved back to his home state after working at Fannie Mae and Enterprise, where we happened to work down the hall from one another for several years, and he now aims to take what he's learned to support inclusive, thriving communities in Wisconsin and beyond. John.
Thank you very much. Wisconsin is well represented. I have to say, Eva is very tough to follow. I think they lowered the temperature in the building for those of us from Wisconsin. It does feel a little chilly in here. But this is a really inspiring event, and it's truly an honor to be able to talk to you a little bit today about some communities that have tried really different approaches to building support for affordable housing, which makes the theme for this year's symposium so great. Each of the three communities that I'm going to tell you a little bit about are in different places on their journey. So in one case, they've done a good job building support, but have just issued an RFP in order to attract some really good developers to the village. Another community actually just received a tax credit award from WIDA for 4% federal and state. And a third and final, which was one of the toughest projects I've ever worked on, has a mixed income development that's actually fully stabilized. So with that, I always like to start a little bit with the state of affairs as I work in communities. This pretty much sums it up, and I think for those of you who work in communities, this might be look somewhat familiar to you. Just about every week, I sit down with really well-meaning individuals who say, you know, look, I'm all for affordable housing, but does it have to be here? And, you know, I think we've already heard a little bit tonight about what some of those barriers are, some of the mindset that we're up against as people think about citing affordable housing in their community. The thought bubble on the right is usually what I'm thinking. Sometimes I verbalize it depending on the relationship. So I'm actually going to start with Shorewood to paint a little picture of Shorewood, Wisconsin. It's a very affluent community just north of downtown Milwaukee, just north of University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, with a strong business district. Runs down right through the center of it. Really nice mix of housing types. And what I think the village did that was really interesting was they invited a number of speakers across sectors to offer their perspective on how affordable housing advances their particular area. So they invited people from healthcare, philanthropy, DEI, and they even had a specialist come and talk about really how when you create a diverse and inclusive region, it lifts all boats. They also coupled that with some data on the extreme shortage of housing in Shorewood. And so this is a community through a really strong resident engagement program, has a community that's really well educated now on this issue. Second is Appleton, Wisconsin, the metropolis. It's about 75,000 people in a metro area of about 200,000 people. Kind of what sets this community apart is it has a arts and entertainment district in downtown that really embraces a fine arts college in the community, pulls in people from all over the world both to study there and to teach. The community just north of downtown Appleton, though, has a pretty well-known past. In the 1980s, there was a facility serving people with mental illness and substance abuse issues that closed, and all of those services were not replaced by other social service providers at the time, and it left people in this pretty small community knowing people who were not in a very good place afterwards. And so what Appleton did was they hired a community engagement agency out of Des Moines, Iowa called RDG that really talked about the history of the neighborhood, and that's why this strategy is called Meeting People Where They're At, to kind of acknowledge the challenge with the community and then go on to describe how well-sited affordable housing in the community could help finally address this really long unmet need. So in Appleton, WIDA just awarded a 4% federal and state tax credit to Rise Apartments, which has really strong wraparound services provided to the supportive housing units on first and second floors. A little bit closer here to DC, this was definitely a really interesting project and unusual in that the business community in this suburban Maryland area really organized in opposition. So these were really strong household name companies with a local presence in suburban Maryland who partnered with small businesses and kind of mid-sized companies, and they sent letters to elected officials and others throughout the state of Maryland to try to build opposition to the project. So what we did here was we met with them in person, talked to them about what affordable housing is and workforce housing is. Also importantly, what it's not, which is, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. What really set this one apart, though, was a people-first strategy. So adjacent to this community in Maryland is a really large shopping center. And so we talked about how the retail workers that serve this office park every day would be living there along with police officers and firefighters. I have to give a shout out, though, to, here we go. I have to give a shout out to James City County in that beautiful Hampton Roads area of Virginia. They took it to another level and actually did a campaign that highlighted real people in their community that were really well known. In this case, a pharmacist, a barista, and a food server, on which the hospitality industry there really depends to really humanize who lives in affordable housing and kind of dispel some of the myths and maybe the perceived threats that people have about people living there. So shout out to James City County. In conclusion, we could probably talk for a few days about what works, but these three things here, at least I have found, ideally in some combination of the three, really help build support. Language absolutely matters. There's a lot of really good research out there done by the MacArthur Foundation, Frameworks Institute, Enterprise Community Partners that help us talk about affordable housing. And it's not, unfortunately, one size fits all, but there's some things the data tells us about what works. Design is absolutely critical, ensuring that the project really looks like it belongs in the community, and ideally giving members of the community an opportunity to weigh in on an aspect of the design. Not too many aspects. I would say identify something that you want the community to weigh in on, and then give them a certain time frame in which to do it so you don't really delay your project too much. And then you've probably heard me say this a few times, community engagement, absolutely critical, and if you're doing the first two well, you're probably involved in the third. So that's it. I just want to say a huge thank you to the NHP Foundation for the opportunity to be here. This is a really wonderful event, and congratulations.
John, first of all, that was a wonderful presentation, and it's really wonderful to actually meet you in person. John schooled me on Wisconsin in my second week on the job, and I'm forever grateful for that as well. Your presentation really resonated with me, and particularly the refreshing way that you addressed humanizing it by presenting the people and the faces of the residents that need affordable housing. This approach, I think, really dovetails with something that NHP Foundation's research has also uncovered. Namely that individual success stories from people living in existing affordable or supportive housing units can help personalize the case for creating more of it. So thank you, John. Now I'd like to please welcome Arlo Chase, Senior Vice President of Real Estate and Development at SUS, our third Building Achievement presenter. So welcome, Arlo. Since 2014, Arlo has directed the real estate, facilities, property development, property management, and urban farms teams at SUS. I don't really know how that all fits on a business card, but I must be about this big. And this comprises a team of more than 80 people overseeing a real estate portfolio of 130 buildings and more than 1.5 million square feet under management, so not a small portfolio. He's here to tell a unique story of garnering support for affordable housing development. Welcome, Arlo.
Thank you so much. Good evening. It's really great to be here, and I'm inspired by the other speakers, Eva in particular. I think our organizations try and address a lot of the same issues And so I'm happy to try and build off your presentation and how take a very specific neighborhood in the Bronx and how SUS has gotten two developments, gotten a community which in the beginning was very oppositional to what we were trying to do and come to some kind of agreement. But before I get into that, I do want to give a shout out to Paulina and Micah and Robert from the New York team at NHP. I haven't seen any of them, but I know we're working on an RFP submission for a site in the Bronx. So I did want to give a shout out and all the other New Yorkers in the crowd. You know, it's great for us in New York. You know, we think we know everything, and we think we have affordable housing. You know, I grew up in New York, so I have that mentality worse than anyone. Yankees, you know, you know, we do not know everything, and we have a lot to learn from places like Houston, especially when it comes to zoning, in my view, and you know the work that places like Houston have done in addressing homelessness in ways that New York has a lot to learn from. So it's really great to be here. All right, so just briefly, SUS is a big, complex organization. Really, we're a social service organization. I run the kind of real estate housing group within that, but really we're at core a social service organization. We were started in the late 70s, and to kind of riff off what John was just saying, to address the closure of state psychiatric and large state institutions for people with mental illness and developmental disabilities, which were closed, and that was a good thing. The challenge was the government didn't put enough money or thought into where all these people were going to go and how they were going to get community-based housing. So that's how SUS and a number of our sister organizations were founded in the late 70s, early 80s to help people move out of those large state institutions into community-based housing. So we operate housing for people with severe developmental disabilities, for people with mental illness, people with substance abuse, and many, many other challenging life situations. But most of them all have the same challenges of growing up Black or brown in poor, disadvantaged communities and starting with really a number of strikes against them. So we've gotten rather large. Our mission is to try and enable all of the people we serve to have a life of purpose. And that means very different things for different people, but that's our vision. So geographically, and I think this is, you know, means more to the New Yorkers probably in the crowd, but, you know, one of the challenges when we talk about NIMBY, you know, some of the things John was talking about was more affluent communities and how they tend to resist affordable supportive housing. SUS really operates mostly in Black and brown low-income neighborhoods. And so the NIMBY conversation is a lot more nuanced because we're talking to people who are maybe homeowners, maybe they came from a lot of the kind of places that we're building, and they're saying, okay, that's fine, these people need a place to go, but we're paying rent, we're paying a mortgage, so we can get beyond that. You know, and the fact is the homeless shelters, the supportive housing are concentrated in Black and brown low-income neighborhoods in New York City. And there's a reason for that. We all know that. Lands is cheaper, and the community opposition is less vocal or it's less received. But we have to take that as a real consideration. And as Eva said, we have to be good neighbors, right? So anyway, most of our programs are in Eastern Brooklyn, East Harlem, and the Southwest Bronx. And I'm going to talk about two developments in the Southwest Bronx, Community Board 5, tonight. So we know, you know, as a city, as an industry, we know that supportive housing is a big part of the answer to chronic homelessness. And I'll just say right out, because I want to own it, that's my vision, my personal mission, SUS mission, is to end chronic homelessness in New York City. It's a big goal, but that's my life mission. So we know that supportive housing is a big piece of that. And so Why is that so hard, right? A lot of you, maybe I'm getting old, but $1 Million Murray. Anybody remember that article that was in the New Yorker about 20 years ago? And it was talking about how homelessness is one of those things that's cheaper to solve than manage, right? So if we can solve it, Eva talked about lessening the burden on first responders. Because we know people who are chronically homeless cycle through various high-cost, low-quality institutions like incarceration, state psychiatric hospitals, jails, other homeless shelters, okay? So it's better for them, it's better for us to solve the problem with permanent housing and social services. So how do we talk about, how do we cite supportive housing? So in these two projects, we were fortunate enough, and Eva touched on this, to have site control. We own these properties, okay? And I want to just jump in to the two properties we're going to talk about. And don't worry, we only have a couple more slides. But so on the left is Jerome Court. Jerome Court was built as a motel in the 1950s. It was a two-story. It looks like a warehouse, but it was a motel. It was built in the 1950s. You know, you can think of the business plan this guy was thinking of. Interior parking, no windows, motel, right off the Cross Bronx Expressway going north. Okay? So hopefully I'm painting a picture of a Hot Sheets motel, right? So, you know, people driving home from Wall Street to Greenwich or to Westchester, boom, off the Cross Bronx, into the interior parking, back on the Cross Bronx, you know, home for gimlets with their wife. So this, the property had accumulated a whole bunch of nuisance complaints, police, et cetera. The city took it over in REM, gave it to an SUS affiliate called Palladia in the early 90s. And Palladia used the existing motel structure to create SRO. It was a HUD, mod, rehab, and tax credits for SRO housing using the motel rooms for 40 individuals. Okay? It was a great use of an existing site. 20 years later, it was not in good condition, and the Jerome Corridor rezoning, which was one of the real, I think, success stories of the city planning administration under de Blasio administration, was rezoning the whole Jerome Corridor. So we took this property, we demolished it, we relocated the 40 residents into much nicer, better housing, and we demolished it, and from the 40 SROs, we now have 100, and I'm gonna just flip forward, the building on the left, it's right next to the subway, 175 apartments with ground floor retail, a much improved streetscape, right at the base of the subway station, 3 stops north of Yankee Stadium, if you want to take a little road trip. Much improved, and we had the site control, we worked with the community on the zoning, and we were able to build that. Going back, the second site, a larger site, just about a half mile from this Jerome Court, is called Star Hill. It was built in 1915 as the first hospice care hospital in the Bronx for patients with cancer. Fascinating history. But again, this was 1915. The building had deteriorated significantly by 2015. We were operating a residential drug treatment center, a 6 to 12 month center, which we really knew was not the right treatment. Really the right treatment modality was short-term stabilization and detox and then permanent housing. This was something kind of betwixt and between. And the building was falling apart, the modality was wrong. So again, we demolished the building. We just closed on the financing for the first phase. And the governor, and we were privileged enough to have the governor and the mayor there, the groundbreaking this summer. On the right, you'll see a rendering of what Star Hill is going to look like. And it'll not only be almost 600 units of affordable and supportive housing, but it's going to be 10,000 square feet publicly accessible green space for the entire community, which is one of the key things that they had asked for in our discussions about the rezoning. So, you know, I do want to just say, you know, we have another site, SUS, one of our first supportive housing sites is just much smaller, 45 units, just a few blocks from Star Hill. When we tried to open it, the community board was extremely oppositional. In fact, we had to have the police come to our community board meeting to escort our CEO out of there because we were afraid for her safety. Now, as all of you know, after it was opened, they feel much, much better about the facility. We're good neighbors. We show up. Our tenants are not perfect, like no neighbor is perfect, but if there's problems, we answer the phone, we meet with the community, we try and hash it out. So, I'm from New York. I don't know many people here. I appreciate you having me. I'll be here today. I'll be at Enterprise Conference tomorrow, so please find me if you want to talk about how do we end chronic homelessness. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you, Arlo, for showing what success can look like when increased density through zoning reform is used to support affordable housing production. You also, again, showed the importance of building strategic relationships with community groups and other stakeholders, which the NHP Foundation study points to as a critical point for securing public support for affordable housing. Please now join me in welcoming Brian Rossbert, the Executive Director for Housing Colorado. For over a decade, Brian has advocated for more affordable housing, partnering with nonprofits, congregations, and local governments to build affordable housing on underutilized land. In 2021, Brian led a subpanel of subject matter experts who made recommendations to the Colorado General Assembly about the use of $400 million in federal ARPA money to be spent on affordable housing in this state. And those recommendations turned into concrete legislation in the last session that will fundamentally change the affordable housing landscape in Colorado. Brian also just held an incredibly successful event in Breckenridge last week that it was a pleasure to be part of and to discuss how we can work with the Colorado congressional delegation to support our federal goals on affordable housing. Brian.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you for being at our conference last week. We sure enjoyed your presentation, as we always do. I want to thank the NHP Foundation for inviting me tonight to share a little bit about something that happened in Denver over the course of the last couple of years. So I'll take your Hot Sheets Motel and I'll raise you sanctioned encampments in Denver. So I'm going to talk a little bit about safe outdoor space and some of the lessons that we learned through the community engagement process that we are applying now to broader affordable housing developments across the state. So what is safe outdoor space? Basically, it is a service-rich environment where folks who have been living in unsanctioned encampments are able to live in a safe, healthy, and thriving community space while we hope to get folks into more permanent housing solutions. This was a response during COVID to the sweeps that were happening in the city. And I can explain safe outdoor space, but I want to hand it off to my buddy Cole, who can do it a little bit better. So hopefully this video will work. Cole's going to show you a little bit of a tour of a safe outdoor space that we had set up in Denver.
Hi, I'm Cole Chandler, Executive Director of Colorado Village Collaborative, and we're in CVC's Safe Outdoor Space today.
Welcome to Colorado Village Collaborative's Safe Outdoor Space. I'm going to give you a quick tour around. We have a secure door. Residents will hit the doorbell to let staff know that they're in. We require everybody to wear masks. Hello, Harrison. Thank you.
May I take your temperature?
Absolutely. So we have our management tent right here. This houses 24/7 staff. To the right here, we have our services tent where we invite outreach workers for housing navigation, medical care, mental health, dental. We have 30 tents. 3 of them are ADA accessible. Each tent has electricity pulled in. Porta potties for the residents. There's 1 for every 10 residents. We also have access to regular trash service that the staff empties on a regular basis. So our residents have access to showers and laundry twice per week. It's been such an awesome community collaborative effort to see everybody come together in this space.
So Cole and Quika definitely helped a large group of organizations and individuals who were working towards creating this safe outdoor space environment in our city. As you can imagine, we had some obstacles to face. We had not only getting sign-off from the city and the mayor, who hasn't always been the friendliest to the homeless community in our city, encouraging sweeps to happen on a regular basis. But we were placing these in residential neighborhoods, in church parking lots and other spaces. And so we had a lot of pushback from the community. And what we learned in this process was to over-communicate. So the video you saw was produced as a way of sharing not only what we were up to, but to share with the community what a safe outdoor space could look like, what it could be for the community, and we were able to share some success. We had a lawsuit in my neighborhood. Round 2 of Safe Outdoor Spaces created a lawsuit in which the local United Methodist pastor was named in the lawsuit, and as well as Cole, who you saw up on the video. We were able to overcome that with really strong community engagement. So by the time we got to version 2 of Safe Outdoor Space, we had registered neighborhood organizations who, I don't know if you have ever run into RNOs who are like gung-ho about affordable housing or gung-ho about homeless service provision in their communities, but we were able to get the RNOs to sign up and endorse the safe outdoor spaces in their communities. The leaflet you see there is something that was distributed around the community near to the locations for a safe outdoor space. But we did a lot to over-communicate what we were talking about because this was a new idea for our city. To talk about the fact that the residents of these safe outdoor spaces would be investing in the community themselves. And so we were able to get ahead of the media machine. We were able to get some positive press coverage, and then we continued that through engagement with the community itself and including community service. Some learnings that we had were, again, to communicate early and often, really to humanize the issue so that folks were getting to meet individuals and residents of these communities and really understand the issue of homelessness, that it's not something that happens only in the urban core, but there are folks who are homeless and experiencing homelessness right in their back door. And so really humanizing the issue, we really wanted to be solution oriented, and I think that that's an important part of this, is that we weren't just complaining about a problem and we had a solution. We had something to offer the community. And so we did a lot of community engagement, but one thing I wanted to share was just some of the outcomes of this. It can be one thing to talk about how great we are, but really the outcomes speak for themselves. We've been able to serve over 300 unduplicated individuals through Safe Outdoor Space, and about a quarter of them have moved on to more permanent housing solutions, which is a really important an amazing feat that we were able to accomplish through this. I will say one of the sad parts of this is one of our safe outdoor spaces actually burned down in the last few weeks. And the only benefit that I could see that came out of that was the community support. The neighborhood that surrounded that individual safe outdoor space really came out and surrounded the residents with their love, with their support, and with their resources. And so, these safe outdoor spaces hopefully will continue on We now have the investment of the city. They've put not only land up, but also money up. And that's only really due to the way in which the community has invested its time, energy, and availability to these spaces. And so I just wanted to bring this example of what can happen when strong community engagement goes on, and really just share with you a success story from our city that hopefully can be replicated elsewhere. It's already been replicated across the state of Colorado in some different spaces. And so just appreciate the opportunity to share with you about safe outdoor space in Denver. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Your building achievement is really out-of-the-box thinking in every way. And that's really what the survey of our NGOs really brought to light, the importance of creative problem solving. We really need a all-of-the-above solution. I think this is a great example of storytelling and getting down to that.
Great, so now we'd like to bring you the results of our Pulse survey. As you know, we asked 2 questions to gauge honest opinion on affordable housing proximity. And I have just been passed the results, and the winner is Taylor Swift. All right, so question 1. If you can only do one thing to create more affordable housing, 5.7% of you said create a massive media education and information campaign. 42% of you said work to change zoning and other laws at the local level. And good news for us at the Affordable Housing Tax Credit Coalition, 51% of you said lobby the government for more affordable housing funding, and we appreciate the NHP Foundation being a major partner in our advocacy efforts. The second question is interesting. If you can only do one thing to combat NIMBYism in relation to building affordable housing, what would it be? 20% of you said offer support for affordable housing to be built in other neighborhoods, and 80% of you said offer support for affordable housing to be built in my neighborhood. So those are the results of the survey, very thought-provoking, a lot to discuss after this. I'll turn it back to Tom.
So just one bit of commentary on the results. So Emily and I make our careers in advocacy and storytelling, talking about these issues. That's what we do. And I have to say I want to push back on our audience, that 5.7% that's talking about storytelling and getting our story in front of the media. I think that's a big reason why we're having more success today talking about these issues, is because of the press coverage and the storytelling of our partners today and others in the industry. So I hope you'll all take that as food for thought, and my unsolicited opinion anyway. Thank you. So we'd now like to introduce Ken White, who works as the Executive Director of NHP Foundation's Resident Services subsidiary, Operation Pathways. It enables him to witness firsthand residents living in NHP's affordable housing communities, where he's heard their stories of struggle, of strength, of hope, and success. Ken and his team of practitioners and coordinators coach and support residents towards gaining new skills, living healthier lives, and achieving the goals they set for themselves and their families. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Emily and Tom. I'd like to start off by thanking all of the sponsors in the room who've made tonight possible, and for your information, if you don't know, that the proceeds from this event go to Operation Pathways and the work that we do for our residents. And I'd also like to thank the NHP trustees and the staff who make the emails and the phone calls to all of the sponsors to encourage you to give so much. And I'd especially like to call out Meki Adnani, who broke records this year for shaking trees and making calls, and did a fantastic job. As I visit our properties and speak to residents, I hear all kinds of stories. Yes, I hear the heart-wrenching stories of sickness and trauma and depression, spousal abuse, addiction, but I also hear the stories of recovery, work promotions, piano recitals, wedding anniversaries, job promotions, college acceptance letters. No one ever knows when the words of encouragement that you offer, or the door that you open, or the intervention or the connection that you make for someone will have an impact that can change the trajectory of someone's life. Operation Pathways attempts to do that every day with our programs and services. For the last 9 years, one example of that, we've been making an impact on teenagers living in our affordable housing by offering an 8-week summer internship program. This summer, 16 of our interns learned about affordable real estate development, design, construction, ownership management, and resident services as taught by our own NHPF team. One of our interns is here with me today to talk to you about her experience in the program. But before I call her up on the stage, I want to ask you to take your phone out and test out your cameras by aiming it at the QR code that you see. And if you missed that or you want to wait till later, there's some spread throughout all of the rooms, and they all take you to the same donation page for Operation Pathways. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't do that one little plug. So please give generously if you haven't already. I don't want you to do it now because what I'd really like you to do is pay attention to our next presenter. I'd like to introduce Sincere Huntley, a resident of Hollander Ridge Apartments in Baltimore, Maryland, who took part in our Operation Pathways summer internship program and would like to present her own achievement story. Sincere will talk to you about her final project for the internship, why she chose it, and what she learned. And I'm so happy to introduce you to Sincere Huntley.
Hello everyone, my name is Sincere Huntley. I'm 17 years old and I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I was a summer intern at Hollander Ridge, which I learned budgeting skills like the in and out of real estate and just having my footway in a professional career at Pathway. Today, I want to be presenting to you guys my presentation. I did a recreation center for youth and family. So the name is Sincere Social and Cultural Community Center. First off, I want to give you guys a background of Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland was an industrial city where a lot of people came for job opportunities. They also came because of the trade and the port that's in Baltimore. Another big thing that goes on in Baltimore is the blight. Blight is basically a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of vacant units, and, a lot of empty properties. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. Another big problem that happens is redlining and structural racism. Redlining is basically where you put people in low-income areas and, Thank you. So you put people in low-income areas because of their race and the amount of money that they make. Also, that's the same thing as sexual racism. So in this PowerPoint, I wanted to basically show that in the city of Baltimore is over 700,000 people that live there, but there only is 44 recreation centers. If you would times it from the amount of parts of Baltimore, it's north, east, south, and west to I'm sorry, I'm nervous. Sorry guys, like I was saying, if you would put it to the different parts of Baltimore and the population, it's not as many that it may seem that it is. The 5 reasons that I believe that this recreation center will make a big difference is because it will make a safe space for not just the youth, but for the families. It will bring the community together, and also I want to give the youth that work in the neighborhood able to have a job opportunity. They will be able to work in the community center to make money in the summertime, and then also a lot of families or parents, if they would like to, they could be able to tutor their students there. And like I said before, at the recreation centers is not that many, but a lot of them were made in like the early 1900s, so they're very old. So in this slide, basically, this was some of the employees at Hollander Ridge. That's Ms. Tamika, Mr. Sam, and that's two of the maintenance men. And in the video, they basically was explaining their reason of why a recreation center was important to them and how it benefit them as being a youth who was going through probably troubled times, and it made a big difference. Because for me, I know being able to go to a recreation center, and like my mom told me, it made a difference, and my grandmother, she needed help being a single mom, so it makes a big difference. So the lot. Basically, I ride past this lot pretty often. I always see it. It's most slow youth, people just standing around there trying to find things to do. It's called the Dartley Park. It's located in the east side of Baltimore, Maryland. It's on Harford Road. And this is currently in a neighborhood where there's a lot of poverty, a lot of crime going on, and it's not really used for the potential that it could be used for. The budgeting plan. So for the budget, we had a minimum budget of $1 million. I decided to use for the construction, the architect found it, the pool, and the lot. The sources of income. So since the property is owned from Baltimore, Maryland, we'll have to ask Baltimore to basically profit into the lot. Also, it will be the locals from the money that's coming in, because most likely if it makes a big difference, a lot of people will want to come in that neighborhood and make them buy there in the neighborhood. Another income is, like I said before, was the pool. I want to use the pool as a way for people to come in the neighborhood in the summertime. They can pay to come there, and that'll be another way of income to come in. The phases of the building. So basically, I want to start from the ground up. So I want to start to make sure that the land is right to be able to build on. After that, make sure that the structure is right, the plumbing, electrical, and then after that, what will be available at the center. Like I said before, it will have a pool that will be a way of income. It will have a kitchen so people can learn how to cook. It will be also a way for a culinary program so people can have a pathway in there if they please to. Have a gymnasium. It will have a ballet center. And like my sister, she loves ballet. And I know that some resources can be very pricey and not available in a lot of neighborhoods. So that's why I feel like that's important to me. And me growing up, I wanted to be a gymnast at first, but it wasn't hard. It wasn't easy for my mom to afford that because it can be very pricey. Another thing is a daycare. I chose a daycare because I know a lot of people don't have people to support them in the neighborhood. They might not be able to work because they don't have anyone to watch the children, and then that can be a big play into it. Who would benefit? Most importantly, I want the locals to benefit in it because it will bring the community together in general. One positive thing can make a lot of negatives even more better. It will bring all the people together. It will bring a closeness. Also, the local stores will benefit because if one thing is going right, then it will bring more people around. The pool will bring more people around. A lot of the stores will bring attention. They will gain money, and it also will give it to the government because it's bringing more profit into the neighborhood. Thank you guys for listening. And
Would you agree that the future of community development is in good hands? Thank you. Thank you, Sincere. Programs like these teen internship programs are made possible by the generosity of everyone in this room. We hope that you do take a minute to click on the QR code and go visit our website and donate. Any gift that you make will help ensure that service-enriched housing never becomes an illusion, which is at the heart of this year's video. And here are Emily and Tom to introduce that to you.
Well, first of all, let's give another round of applause for Sincere. I don't know if... Not only for her work, but I don't know if any of us could have gotten up here when we were 17 years old and done what she just did. So thank you. I also just want to give another round of applause to all of our great presenters this year for some quick and very thought-provoking presentations.
All right, and now on for our video. This year's video, Affordable Housing, Not an Illusion, is a different take for the organization. It's all about the importance and the nuances of what we say and what people hear as we advocate for affordable housing.
We all start with different preconceived ideas about experiences, people groups, communities. With affordable housing, it could mean one thing to you, but something different to someone else. When you say affordable housing, you think of a better community. When others hear affordable housing, they hear a barrier, an obstacle, or an illusion. And when these words don't help us communicate, we can't improve. But language doesn't have to be the problem when advocating for affordable housing. Let's reframe affordable housing to those around us with a simple idea: that affordable housing is not just red tape from some specific project, point system, or piece of legislation, but as a basic need all of us have. A foundation for us to build our education, career, and family. Build popular support for the policies and developments that can change lives, and challenge the misunderstandings in your community. And together, we can create a better understanding of affordable housing.
It's now my honor this evening to introduce you to Jeff Olivet, the Executive Director of the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. Long before the Biden administration heard about him and appointed him to the top job in the country on homelessness, Jeff was working as a street outreach worker, case manager, and contributing more than 25 years of both direct service and scholarship to this field. He has been the principal investigator on multiple research studies founded by private foundations and the National Institute of Health. He's a champion of racial equity, gender equality, and social justice. On a personal note, Jeff and his wife Jessica are good friends of mine, and they're partners in both life and in their work goals. And with Jeff's commitment to gender equality, I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning this, but in her own right, Jessica is the principal of Community Solutions, whose Built for Zero initiative received a $100 million grant from the MacArthur Foundation to solve the critical problem of homelessness. Together, they're a true power couple in this field. And please join me in welcoming to the stage the Executive Director of USICH and my good friend, Jeff Olivet.
Good evening. It is so good to be with you all. And just what an amazing group of speakers and project, and what incredible work is happening here. I think the work you all are doing collectively is absolutely amazing. And, you know, I get to speak to a lot of groups, I get to sit with a lot of amazing people, and I'm not just blowing smoke when I say the work of NHP Foundation is amazing. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've sat with your residents at Foxwood Manor in Levittown. I've met young people at Bayview Towers in Stamford and watch them as they create a space for community. And I have been blown away by the quality and depth of the work that you all do. The work that NHP Foundation and Operation Pathways and all of the other affiliates do is a homelessness prevention strategy. I think you've heard that in various ways tonight. But I just want to congratulate all of you. Dick, the work that you all are doing is incredible. Your board of directors and the staff is just fantastic. And Sincere, I got to tell you, I'm blown away by your intelligence and your vision. Not only do we need more projects like the one that you envisioned and told us about tonight, we need more visionaries like you to pull it off. So thank you for being here, and thank you for everything you're already doing and for everything you will do. So Ken outed me. I've been in the homelessness field for well over 25 years at this point, and I've seen a lot in that time. I've seen a lot of things that work, and I've seen a lot of things that don't work so well. But one thing I've seen is the transformative power of a home, the transformative power of a community, of a safe, stable place to call one's own, and a community to build around that. And that's what I've seen when I've been at Bayview and when I've been at Foxwood. I've also seen the devastation that exists when there's not access to an affordable, stable home and the services and supports that people need. I've had friends die on the street. I've participated in, year after year, on the longest night of the year, homeless person memorial services. I know our friends in Denver do these. Communities all over the country read the names of people who have died. And year after year after year, tens of thousands of our brothers and sisters are dying on the streets of this country. Now, the work you're doing matters, and it's making a huge difference, and yet there's more work to be done. In my lifetime, this nation has gone from a surplus of affordable housing to a deficit of affordable housing. In fact, in 1970, we had a surplus of about 300,000 units of affordable housing for extremely low-income renters. That's the folks who are deepest down in poverty, closest to the edge of homelessness. 50 years ago, we had a surplus of 300,000 units. Today, we have a deficit of 7 million units for those extremely low-income renters. No wonder homelessness has taken off like this over the last 30 or 40 years. The thing that's amazing is that we don't have more homeless than we do, and that's a testament to the incredible work that you all do. But if you think about this, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition teaches us that there are about 37 units available for every 100 extremely low-income renters. Think about that. Just kind of look around the room. We've got a few hundred people here. Imagine there are housing units for about a third of us, and the others are left to fend for themselves. I've been the parent of small children. They're much bigger now, but I went to too many birthday parties for 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds, and have you ever seen musical chairs at that level? They're vicious, man. They just like full body contact sport musical chairs. Cute at a birthday party, not so cute when we're talking about access to housing, but that's exactly what's happening. We have a deadly and vicious game of musical chairs going on in this country when it comes to who gets housing, and we know who gets left out. We know that communities of color are the hardest hit by homelessness. African Americans in this country are represented in the homeless population 3 to 1 compared to their general population numbers. Native Americans even higher at about 5 to 1. And that is no accident. You talked about redlining. The legacy of redlining is not only housing segregation in communities, it's also the lost opportunity for generational wealth accumulation in the form of home ownership that has put communities of color right at the edge of homelessness with very, very little economic buffer to withstand uncertainty. It's no accident that people of color are experiencing homelessness at higher rates. It is the result of decades of policy designed to produce that outcome. Now, I'd like to talk just a little bit about some of what we're doing in the Biden-Harris administration, some of what we are going to do moving forward, and some of what we need from you. This administration on day one issued executive orders on racial equity and on diversity and equity and inclusion in federal agencies. My agency, along with every other federal agency, responded by putting together action plans around racial equity in our work and our impact, and also DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, in our own agencies, in how we do our business, how we hire and support our staff, how we train our folks to understand and respond to structural racism. And those have been very deliberate efforts over the last couple of years. But this hasn't just been talk. The administration has also put money on the table to address homelessness. President Biden has doubled the homeless response budget in the last 2 years. The American Rescue Plan put hundreds of millions of dollars into communities in the form of emergency housing vouchers. The emergency rental assistance dollars that many of you saw at work in your communities prevented homelessness for hundreds of thousands of households in this country. And recently, HUD announced an almost $400 million investment in addressing unsheltered homelessness in communities. And if you have any friends working on that application, it's due tomorrow. The October 20th deadline is lingering in my ears on that one. So we've done a lot. And we also, the administration under Secretary Fudge's leadership at HUD launched the House America initiative, and 100 communities have come on board to that initiative in the last year, and they've housed 62,000 people and created 15,000 units of new housing in the pipeline. That's just a start. That doesn't quite put a dent in where we are in terms of the size and scope of homelessness in this country, but it's heading the right direction. Now, where we're going moving forward, I hope you all have read this already. You all are working in housing, and many of you on the housing supply side of things. The White House, about 3 or 4 months ago, released a housing supply action plan that lays out strategies for incentivizing zoning changes that will allow for more affordable housing development, rethinking and reevaluating what we can do at the federal level around financing to make financing of affordable housing more flexible. The administration needs to hear from you all. As that plan gets into motion, as it rolls out, we need to know from you all what you need. And I'm hearing loud and clear here tonight a drumbeat of advocacy, a drumbeat of public awareness. I would add to that, just keep it coming, because we need to hear from you. The other thing that we're about to release in the next few weeks is the Biden and Harris administration's federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness. And this plan will lead with equity. It will ground our policy decisions in data and evidence, which I kind of believe in, like doing the stuff that works. You know, we heard this a lot tonight from the amazing work in Houston and in Colorado and around the country. There are great models to solve homelessness, much better than we had 25 years ago. I think the technologies are there, the array of wraparound supports we know much more about. We haven't scaled it up. That's one issue. We need to scale up the stuff that's working. But the other thing we haven't done is to turn off the faucet. So in this country, every day, an average of 2,500 people exit homelessness, thanks to the work of many of you in this room and your colleagues around the country. But at the same time, almost 2,500 become homeless. That totals up to almost 900,000 people a year exiting homeless through programs that work, yet 900,000 more falling into homelessness. So we've got to pair the stuff that's working with an upstream prevention strategy that in the 30 years I've been in this work, we have never attended to very well. That's been a collective failure that we've not figured out how to stem the tide of people moving into homelessness. That starts in looking at critical transitions, like when young people age out of foster care, many of whom are young people of color. 9 out of 10, most of the research would say, young people aging out of foster care into homelessness are youth of color. About 50% identify as LGBTQ. So if we could figure out a prevention strategy there, which we are laying out in our plan, that is also a racial equity strategy. That is also a strategy to support LGBTQ young people at a critical moment in their lives. We need to do the same thing as people are transitioning from jail and prison back into the community. We need to do the same thing as people are transitioning from military service back into civilian life. We've got to do better at these critical moments of transition so that people don't become homeless in the first place. This will be a much easier problem to manage if we can close the front door. our plan's focusing on that. We are also acutely aware of the crisis of homelessness right in front of us. Many of you maybe came in the front doors of Union Station tonight. There was an encampment here a few weeks ago, and the District of Columbia has worked to address encampments through housing and services, not through police sweeps. Now, it hasn't been perfect. I think we've got a long way to go in communities across the country for how we address the crisis of unsheltered homelessness through the lens of humanity, not through the lens of law enforcement. I was in Houston not long ago, Eva, and was out with some of the outreach teams under the bridges with the encampment resolution strategy that Mayor Turner is undertaking, and it's working. The city of Houston has reduced homelessness overall by 63% in the last decade. There are successes to look at. And while the crisis is right here with us, while it's growing in some communities, there are a lot of things that are working. We got to double down on those, and we got to continue creating new pathways forward. What I would like to leave you with is a couple of challenges. I think too often the housing world doesn't talk about homelessness enough, and the homelessness world doesn't connect enough with the affordable housing development world. We kind of know each other are out there, but the pieces aren't always connected, and there's not always great collaboration. I love that you all focused on this topic today, not just because I get to come and speak with you, but because I think it is a critical piece of your work. I said at the outset that the work that NHP Foundation is doing is a homelessness prevention strategy. It's also a solution to homelessness for those who are there now. The range of affordable housing and community that you offer, it's how to do this. It's how to solve this problem. We need more people like you doing this kind of work. We also need you to connect the dots between those worlds, to talk unabashedly about your work as a solution to homelessness, to talk unabashedly about your work as a solution that moves us closer to racial justice and housing justice. We also need you to stay involved and stay engaged. The work you're doing is hard. I've sat with your resident services coordinators. I've seen the stress that's on their shoulders. I've been a case manager myself. I've been a local coalition builder. This is hard work. It takes its toll on the people doing it. And in the homelessness world, many years we see something like 50% turnover in the workforce. That tells you something about how we value it as a society, about how we pay people. But it also says something about the emotional toll. And my encouragement to you in that is to take care of yourselves in this work, to take care of each other in this work, and to do it in solidarity with people who are experiencing homelessness, who have exited homelessness, and who have the deepest well of wisdom in how to solve homelessness. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for being here tonight. It's been great to be with you and to hear all of these amazing voices. Keep up your good work.
Thank you, Jeff, for these important words that we know will resonate with us all and help us in the work we do every day, as well as work to gain popular support for affordable housing. Please now enjoy dinner and networking with your colleagues, the best part of the symposium every year. Thank you to everyone here tonight. And finally, can I please have all of our award winners please come up on stage? All the speakers.